Greetings, YouTubers. It's a pretty nasty, cold, wet, just a generally gross day today, but not for me and not for those of you watching, because for the next 10 or so minutes we are going to be sitting by this riverbank. Now I was going to film the whole painting from beginning to end in different parts, and I was going to film the blocking in as well, but I forgot to do that last night when I was painting. So we are going to join this tutorial, demonstration, whatever you want to call it, from the block in start, or from the after the block in start. Putting the details on anyway. So let's get working on that right now. The first thing is going to start working on the sky. Now there's trees, if you look in the photograph, that come over this area here. So we don't need to, I mean that's blocked in acrylic. All of this is blocked in acrylic as per normal. We don't need to put any oil on top of that bit there, because the majority of that is going to be covered. So this is the area here that we need to work on. I'm not going to go into any more detail in that. We're just going to speed through that bit, get that bit done, so we can then start working on the distance here. So with the sky now finished, we need to start working on this area here, which is just like a hillside in the background that's covered with trees. You can see some areas of rock in there as well, which we may or we may not put in. I'm not sure how important that is. But what we need to do now is add the darks to this middle tone, and then we can add the lights afterwards. Now I often find when I block in that quite often the block in, I don't know whether it's the paint, as it dries it goes lighter, but that is probably a little bit lighter than I would have liked to have blocked it in. But we need to now darken that. We don't want to just go over it with a blanket dark colour, so it's just like another block in. We need to add just the darks where we think they're going to be. Now that's quite time consuming, so we're going to try and do that en masse, and I'll show you how. We're going to use this Tree and Texture series brush from Rosemary & Co. This is the size 3/8, and I'm now just going to mix up a bluey dark green, and what I've done is I've mixed together some ivory black, some cerulean blue and Windsor lemon. I've also used some liquid, and that's going to help give us a little bit more flow, and I'm just going to, as you've probably seen me do before, just put the darker areas in. I'm not brushing against it, I'm just tapping against the panel, and I'm going to go over pretty much the whole area just like that. What that's doing is it's giving us a bit of texture. So now if we zoom in, what you can see is, using that Tree and Texture series brush, it is essentially doing just that. It's giving you a texture. So we're putting darker areas in, and we're not being terribly careful about really even where we're putting those. We're just doing a sort of going over the whole thing. But what you can see is you've got darker areas and lighter areas. Obviously those lighter areas is the acrylic blocking underneath. Now because we've used liquid, mixed that in with the oil paint that we're going over the top with, this darker colour, it gives us much more of a nice mottled look. So it's giving us the feeling that there's a lot more detail in that area, ready now to start putting on the highlights. Okay, so let's have a look at the photograph now. As I said, we put in the darks, we now need to put in these lighter colours. And I'm going to use, I think to start off with, there are many different ways of doing this. I'm going to use this fan brush. I'm just going to use the corner. You've probably seen me do this before, but just using that corner, hardly putting any pressure on the painting at all. We're going to try and get what look like canopies. Now, at the very far edge of this hillside here, probably don't need to put in quite so much saturation. And what I mean by that, of course, is it can be more of a obviously not a grey scale, but you don't need to have a high level of colour in there, because the further back you go, the more atmosphere there is and the less colourful it looks. As we then sort of move down and we move into the closer areas, we can then perhaps start to just add a little bit more saturation. As you can see here, this is more of a grey, and this here has got a lovely green colour, and that's going to give you that feeling of depth as well. But I'm just going to zoom in a little bit now so that you can see how I'm doing these details. So once again, using the corner of the brush. Now you may well find that one corner works better than another, and that'll be to do with the shape of it. So try one side first of all, and then if it works, great. If it doesn't, try the other side. You might even need to try a different brush, an older brush or a newer brush. Try all different things in order to get the effect you're after. Now what we don't want to do, or I don't want to do with this, is just have, as we did with the darks, just a blanket coverage. We need to make sure we're now making these look much more like canopies, so we can leave some of the darker areas within there. So this area here, for example, maybe a little bit darker. I'm going to add just a little bit more green because I feel that there's probably not quite enough colour now, so I've just added a small amount of sap green. So just really, really small, gentle brush marks here. Also, the trick is to be patient. It's really easy to start thinking, you want to see progress, so you start to rush a little bit. Just be patient. So now, just the same as we did when we put the darker areas in the distant hillside, going to do the same thing. Going to do the same thing for these foreground trees. So back with the fan brush again, and now just trying to mimic roughly what we can see in the photograph, getting the colours in the right places. But essentially the technique is exactly the same as the one we've been using for these trees. Okay, so next step is going to be just to put in some branches and some trunks for this tree here. I'm going to do it now because there's a lot of foliage over the top of those, or the majority of those trunks and branches, so we'll do that and then we'll build the leaves over the top of it. Okay, so I'm going to now continue with this area over here for another hour or so today. But tomorrow I'm going to show you how to do this area here. Now this is going to be, it's actually like a retaining wall. It's like an old stone wall really. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. And then we're probably going to move over to this part here, and we've got some rocks and things on this side. In the next video, I'm going to show you that part there.